All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're digging into a story that's been hiding in plain sight: the incredibly rich, complex, and often overlooked history of Italians in Los Angeles. So if you think you know the Italian American story, get ready for a version you have probably never heard before. Okay, so let's get this straight. The entire Italian American experience isn't just one single story. The one that revolves around Ellis Island in New York. The journey out to the West Coast, it created a completely distinct culture. I mean, sure, there are similarities, but as one expert puts it, it's the differences that are the really fascinating part. So how do we unpack all of this? Well, to answer that, we're going to follow the amazing work of Marianna Gatto. She's the director of the Italian American Museum of Los Angeles, and she's written a totally groundbreaking book on this exact subject. Her life's work is all about bringing this invisible story into the light. And you have to understand, for Mariana, this wasn't just some dusty academic project. Nope. It all started as a deeply personal quest, a mission to figure out her own family's journey and really to find her own place in a city as huge as Los Angeles. Now check this out, because this map tells a story all by itself. Forget what you think you know about Ellis Island. Mariana's Sicilian family, they came in through Louisiana way back in 1897. Then they headed to Colorado. Meanwhile, her other grandfather, from Calabria, came into the U.S. through Canada and also ended up in Colorado. It wasn't until 1948 that her dad's family finally made the move to L.A. This whole journey, spanning generations and moving west, is a perfect example of that different story we're talking about. So how did all this feel growing up? Well, Mariana uses this perfect metaphor to describe trying to figure out her identity: a Rubik's Cube. A puzzle that she just felt like she could never, ever solve. And this really breaks down why it felt so unsolvable. Just picture it. You're the only Italian-American kid in your whole class. So you go looking for your story in history books. But wait a minute, Italian Americans aren't in the LA history books, and LA isn't in the Italian American history books. You can see how that would create this feeling of not really belonging in either world. But then something happened. As a college student, she stumbled upon something in downtown LA that would change her life, pretty much giving her the key to that Rubik's Cube and setting her on her life's path. She found this place, the Old Italian Hall. It was this historic community hub from the early 1900s. But when she first saw it, oh man, it was a complete wreck. We're talking dilapidated, pigeons flying around inside, literally an inch of dust and dirt on everything. But where most people saw a ruin, she saw something else entirely. She saw a vision of a cultural home, tangible proof that Italians had a real place in LA and a future center for history. And right there, standing in all that dust and decay, she said this to herself. It was more than a thought, it was a vow. A moment of total clarity that set her on this mission she didn't even know she was looking for. And get this, that promise, that vision, it actually came true. After years of hard work, fundraising, and research, in 2010, Marianna Gatto became the very first director of the Italian American Museum of Los Angeles, right there in that beautifully restored Italian hall. So with the museum finally established, the real work could begin. Piecing together that hidden history and sharing it not just with folks in LA, but with the whole world. And one of the main ways they do this is through these amazing award-winning exhibits that just bring the culture to life. Let me show you just a couple of quick examples. Okay, so Pinocchio, right? We all know the Disney story. But they took it and dug so much deeper, exploring the character as this global cultural icon. And that fresh take brought in a record number of visitors, proving that even a familiar story can be a gateway to a much deeper history. And they've got this upcoming exhibit called Mangia. I mean, who doesn't love Italian food? But this is all about its incredible journey, how it went from being this, marginalized immigrant food to one of America's absolute favorites. It's a history a lot of us have tasted, but never really thought about. Now, this is what I think is absolutely fascinating. You might think an Italian-American museum would mostly attract, well, Italian Americans, but that's not the case at all. Only a small fraction of their visitors are of Italian descent. The vast majority come from all sorts of diverse backgrounds, which just goes to show you that this hidden story has a truly universal appeal. To really capture this story in her book, Mariana came up with a really special term: autohistory. See, it's not just a dry history textbook. It's a history told from the inside, blending all the tough, scholarly research with the personal view of someone who's actually lived it. And this auto history uncovers some truly mind-blowing stuff. Like, did you know Italians were in LA 200 years ago? Before California was even a state, before Italy was even a unified country? Or that they were the pioneers of the entire California wine industry? Yeah, that didn't start in Napa, it started right there in LA. The book also gets into their huge impact on Hollywood and the really unique struggles they faced during World War II, when West Coast Italians faced much tougher restrictions than those back east. But, telling these stories isn't just about digging into the past. The museum and the community are dealing with some very real, very current challenges. The community's been hit with vandalism recently, and it's really important to separate the two different incidents here. First, St. Peter's Italian Church has been tagged with anti-Italian and anti-colonial messages. Now, this is tied into much bigger, really complex citywide issues. Then, in a totally separate event, the museum itself was damaged during protests about federal immigration policy. The museum wasn't the target, but the irony of a museum about immigrants getting damaged during an immigration protest wasn't lost on anybody. And on top of all that, LA has been right at the center of the whole debate over Christopher Columbus. Back in 2017, the city council voted to get rid of Columbus Day as a holiday, and a year later, the city's big Columbus statue was taken down from public property. So, faced with all of this, Marianna Gatto has a really powerful reminder. She says, regardless of holidays or statues, the real mission has to continue, preserving the community's heritage and telling its stories. The key word is resilience. So why does the story of one community in one city matter to the rest of us? Well, because it's really about a much bigger question. Whose stories get told, and who gets to be a part of history? And what's cool is that Marianna's advice for her community is really a playbook for all of us. Support your local museums and cultural spots, fight for those programs that teach history and language, get involved, organize. Basically, do whatever it takes to make sure that your community's story, whatever it may be, gets told right and is saved for the future. And that really leaves us with this final question to think about. The story of LA's Italians was a hidden history, a puzzle that's now been solved. So it makes you wonder, what incredible, essential stories are waiting in your own community, right in your own backyard, just waiting for someone like you to come along and uncover them?